Corm, your host with The Truth is Simple. Today is April 16th, 2024, episode 13, season 2. We're going to be talking about tolerance or intolerance. Where has America been? What have we been doing? Most of you are probably thinking, you know what? We're not a very tolerant nation. But when you think of all the changes and everything that's happened in the last, I'm going to say since before Barack Obama took office. If you haven't put your foot up, said anything to anybody, if you've been in your little corner and you just said like, I'm not talking, I don't care, I don't like politics, I don't want to be a part of the fight or the war, they could just go do whatever they want. Well, you're kind of giving up your freedoms. And you guys are called the silent majority. If you were alive when Nixon was president, I think in one of his years, says in his televised address on November 3rd, 1969. Most of you probably weren't born yet. The silent majority is an unspecified large group of people in a country or group who do not express their opinions publicly. That was me. It was, believe it or not. I didn't want to get in trouble. I came from a law enforcement background where you didn't go against the orders of your commanding officer or your sergeant or lieutenant or whatever. You followed the orders. And, you know, I took oaths of office, you know, to uphold the Constitution of the United States against foreign and domestic terrorists or actors. And here I am. So I'm upholding my oath of office, even though I'm not a police officer anymore or a sheriff or a marshal anymore. But I took an oath, and to me, the oath is the most important thing. It is what you are. If you can't live up to what your promises are, what kind of person are you? So most of you probably have never taken an oath. But if you were in the military, if you ever worked in education, I took the same oath as a teacher, basically, to protect my students against those things that were against the Constitution, to protect it from persons both foreign and domestic. But Nixon talked about the silent majority. You need to speak up. We are out of time in the United States of America. We have been extremely tolerant over the last 12 years, more than that. Obama was president for 8, then we had Trump for 4, and then we have Biden for another 4. So you're looking at 16 years. This country is almost gone as we know it. The cost of everything is gone through the ceiling. I just bought a Jeep. That was probably the worst purchase I've ever made. And I paid cash for it from savings that I've had for some time, and now that Jeep is kind of like consistently breaking down. So it's just like taking all my money bit by bit by bit by bit. And that's kind of like what the federal government's been doing to us for a long time. If you are a government person, I was a government person. There's no reason you can't stand up and say enough is enough. Fiscal responsibility is the key word here. But we've listened to people like from Black Lives Matter. We all think, you know, there has been some racial issues in the past in this country, but nothing like there was back in probably from the Civil War through the 1960s. Martin Luther King kind of really kicked that up and kind of beat that to a nugget to some aspect. Not that there hasn't still been some, but the United States is good in fixing things and changing things, but you don't racially attack another group and give more to another group to fix things in the past. Reparations is BS. There has been other than people coming across the border from Mexico right now, there has been no slavery in the United States since 1960 or 1864, I think, is when the Civil War ended, or 1865. One of those 2 years. There has been no slavery, formalized slavery. There is slavery in the United States. Ask Biden, ask the FBI, ask the Department of Justice why they're not going after these organizations that are committing slavery to mostly, I don't know if it's true, but probably mostly Hispanic women and children, boys and girls coming across our southern border, putting them into slavery and so forth, sex slaves. Where are they? What are they doing to stop it? Not much. Um, just like the people coming across the border, we don't know who they are, what they are. So, tolerance or intolerance? We've been a very tolerant country, us citizens, the silent majority. It's time to stand up and say, whoa. It's time to stand up and say, stop. Well, what makes a country a country? What makes us prejudice or racist or whatever? If we look at the United States, we all know where it was formed. It was 13 original colonies from Great Britain at the time. Majority of the population came from Europe, which is white, right? I hate to say it to you, but same for South America. If you haven't looked, Spain is in Europe, and therefore, I guess they are all white people too. So I just filled out an application the other day for something, and it asked me my ethnicity. Am I Hispanic, or if I'm not Hispanic? Is that the same thing as being Mexican or I don't know. But they had black, white, Asian, and that type on the other side, and then they had this. What is that all about? What is that about? I asked the guy, what is this about? What does this mean? My ethnicity, am I of Southern or Mexican or South American descent? What the heck does it matter? I just don't get it. They're all white people. They come from Spain or Portugal, Brazil, right? So what makes a country a country? What makes the United States or any country in the world what it is? Customs, right? I'm not talking about coming across the border, the customs people there searching your bags and checking your, because we don't do that in this country. In fact, I've been to Mexico a couple times. The border people really seem pretty lackadaisical. Even at the where you cross legally. I mean, it's like, let me see your passport. I mean, they ran it through the machine and all that stuff, but it was like, they didn't really care. At least that's the impression I got. They didn't really care. Culture, right? The makeup of your people, their traditions, what they believe in. We've had some holidays in this country that have been attacked. The latest one by Governor Whitmer made comment to that on Easter, where she's calling it LGB Reflection Day on Easter Sunday. Pissing off like 70% of the people in the country. She just doesn't get it. And the government, there you go. The government and political people are the ones that are destroying America the most. If I ran for school board here a year and a half ago and didn't make it, I finished out of the, I think there was 10 or 11 on the ballot. I was number 6. I'm surprised I finished that low. Because the others were, one was a state assembly person who actually won. The other one was the incumbent, of course, running for office. And then there was some other people that were backed by political organizations here in town. So they're spending a ton of money trying to get these people elected and put into office, the school board. I went to some of the people and talked to them, but I really didn't want their money because I'm not going to be beholden to special interest groups. I'm working for the parents, and I'm going to fix things so they work, and rather than not fix them and so they don't work for some interest. Skin color. I'm kind of white right now. I'm just looking at a picture over here. I don't know if it will show up good on this camera or not, but I'm looking at that and I'm like dark. Is that me? It is. 30 years ago, I'm like dark. So my skin color changes from winter to summer. In winter times, I'm whiter than white, and in summertime, I'm darker than dark. Almost look like a South American or Mexican or something like that. I won't go as far as saying black, but I think I look more black in that picture than some of the people I've seen that are black. Oh, schools. Oh, bad one. There is a video I'm going to show here shortly that talks about how we need to get to the kids in our schools, our youth, and get them interested in fighting the war of racism. Fighting the war of racism in the world. All fine and dandy, but when you start a war, there's going to be an opposing side that's going to fight as well. So that's not what you want to do. In fact, I heard some news the other day, Gaza, where Israel's fighting Hamas on the Gaza Strip. right on the border of Israel and the Mediterranean Sea. They said that even today, if Israel just left the Gaza Strip and they had an election, most likely the citizens of Gaza would still vote for Hamas to be their government. Are you kidding me? Who would vote for somebody that's going to be guaranteed destruction every 20 years? That's not very smart on their part. And that's what we're doing here in America. We're sitting on a fence. We're that silent majority that's not talking about anything or doing anything. Politics and government, the worst thing for racism and so forth is government. They are the cause of racism across the country or across the world. What's happening with the people, the Muslims and so forth, Christians and so forth in China? It's the government going after them. What's happening in all the countries in the Middle East, the Islamic countries? While they are tolerant to some extent, they are not tolerant. They will come and close you down, put you in jail. If you're a Christian or a Jew or whatever you might be, a Buddhist, other than being a Muslim. So governments are putting people in jail. Same with here in the United States. Believe it or not, they're sending Christians who happen to be conservative to jail, right? Because it's 70% of the population. If you can control that 70% of the population by putting them in jail, then, you can run the country without any fear of reprisal. Propaganda. I talked about this before. The media. They are the worst of the worst. They are working for these organizations and for these few rich people that want globalized leadership who are in control. Do you think if we went that way, do you think for 1 second that they are going to care about racism? 1 second. When they have control. They might use it now to pull people in to support them. But once they have total control, do you think they're going to care? No, they're not. They're not going to care. And then language. I've been watching a show called Shogun on, I think it's Hulu. And there is an English sailor who is guiding his ship to follow the black ship from the Portuguese of Portugal to Japan. Portuguese at this time, per the movie, were the only ones really trading with Japan at the time. They had kind of like just a one country contract with Japan to do all their trade. So they call it the black ship, and he kind of trailed it and followed it, started to follow it there. He got kind of shipwrecked with his crew to some aspect. The ship didn't sink, but I think it went aground or something like that, and the Japanese were able to get it off, repair it or whatever, so it didn't sink. So the ship's still there. But he's in a foreign land. He doesn't speak one word of Japanese, and they don't speak one word of English. There are a few that do speak Portuguese. I guess they're talking in English, but it's actually Portuguese, and they're talking in Japanese. So how does that work, right? What is, next word, xenophobia. Xenophobia is the fear and hatred of strangers or foreigners, or anything that is strange or foreign. So we have, they're saying like 8 to 10 million people have crossed our border. Wrong. It's probably 15 to 17 million or more have crossed our border since Biden has been in office. But when I go to Mexico, same thing. I kind of speak a little bit of Spanish, not much, maybe enough to get by, but I go to areas where there's mostly American tourists, and so therefore there's always somebody at those locations that speaks fairly decent English. But if you go into the more rural areas, they're not going to be speaking English, and you're kind of be that outside. They're going to have a little bit of xenophobia against you, as well as you against them. So it's the fear and hatred of strangers or foreigners, or anything that is strange or foreign. We've had a mass migration over the last 100 years since World War II. People coming from Islamic countries for a good reason, because they are living in totalitarian systems that they don't have any control or really any freedom unless you're in the super high rich class there. Same with Russia to some aspect, China, maybe Brazil now that is turning towards communism, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea. All these countries are communist. They go after religious people of all anybody that could possibly subvert the government's control. And of course, those governments really don't care what race you are. If they see you as a threat or what religion you are, if they see you as a threat, they're going to lock you up and or kill you. Welcome to the United States of America. That's where we're going. Ronald Reagan said, I'm not sure when, but words that I think we've heard it a lot. Maybe it's more in the last 4 or 5 years than we've heard probably in some time since he said it. But it's a term that's right on cue with where we are right now. And that term is, hi, I'm from the government. And I'm here to help you. Really? I just paid over 10 grand in taxes, property and income tax, in the last month. It's weird how California put the property taxes in the same month your income taxes to the federal government and income taxes in the state of California are due. Why would they do that? You're working the whole 6 months from January to June just to pay your taxes in California. Probably more than that. Probably till August or September now, paying your taxes in California and to the federal government. So I heard that the IRS, you heard that Biden said, let's hire more IRS agents to go after the extremely rich and get more tax money in. Why would he do that? He's one of those. They're the ones that are giving him the money to get reelected. Why do you think for 1 second you're going to buy that BS? Why would you believe it? He's not going to give you anything. They're coming after the IRS is coming after people that are making less than $200,000 now. That's what their main focus is, because they can't afford an attorney to protect them or an accountant to protect them when they get audited. So they realize that, hey, we're going to go after this class because they'll just pay the fine. If it's somewhere between 5 and 15 grand, most likely we'll get them to pay us, or we'll just take the money straight out of their accounts if they have it. So there you go. So let's look at, I'm not going to show it to you, but let's look at what tolerance is, the definition for tolerance. And that is the capacity for the patience of recognizing and respecting the beliefs or practices of others. Wow. The capacity for or the practice of recognizing and respecting the beliefs or practices of others. Let's look at intolerance. And I hate when they do this. Intolerance is the lack of tolerance. So you don't really care about recognizing or respecting the beliefs and practices of others. And there are a ton of people that are out there who could care less about you, me, or members of their family, or their parents, their grandparents, their cousins, their relatives, or, when it comes to the bottom line, they probably don't even care about their friends, to be honest with you. But, I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would say at least a third of the countries in that region. Here is another one for intolerance. The quality of being intolerant, refusal to allow others the enjoyment of their opinions, chosen modes of worship, and the lack of patience and forbearance, irritability, and bigotry. That's pretty good, right? Willingness to recognize the respect differences in opinions or beliefs, impatience with annoyances. I find, as well as I'm sure many people find, that I get intolerant with them. I kind of accept it to a certain point, and it's like, bam, I'm done. I just don't want to hear it anymore. Let's talk about something else, or I'm walking away. I'm not usually one to get in one's face and really speak my mind, but it happens from time and time. You can't see my shirt. The age of chivalry. Chivalry, that's a good one too, right? Oh, yeah. So chivalry has disappeared. Let's see. Intolerance, lack of tolerance. So we did all those. All right. I'm going to show you a couple things some left-sided groups or persons have done to right-sided. I have to tell you, I tried to look for both, but it's pretty far. I didn't really find anything the right was doing to the left, to be honest with you. But these were three that kind of popped up pretty quick. One was just a week ago. The other one was probably a couple months back. And one's fairly relevant. Well, it's probably a couple weeks too. So let's look at these, and we're going to discuss kind of each one a little bit. If I can pull those up, let's see. I think it's that one. Yep. All right. So I got to go into the page and click the button. Sorry about that. It's a one-man show. What can you say?
It's this display of patriotism that Borderline Dance Group has come to be known for. Since they first started line dancing as volunteers 7 years ago.
It's very fun. The girls absolutely love it. It's very high energy.
But before their performance at the Emerald City Hoedown in downtown Seattle last weekend,
and he told me that there was some individuals within the community that felt unsafe and bothered, triggered, if you will, by our flag shirts.
Organizers told them their costumes offended some people. But why?
What we were told had to do with what was going on in Palestine and the LGBTQ community in America.
The dancers didn't understand.
There's no words.
Was there anything specific that they pointed out about the shirt that was offensive?
No. Just flag themed.
I even asked them.
Yes, that a controversial comment was made by a team member that would have started contention.
I don't believe so, no.
No, we were all pretty much just sitting together in a group, just talking amongst ourselves.
They told me they don't even have any political affiliations.
We didn't hesitate to accept and perform for a community who really does value inclusivity, that was not also extended to us.
In a Facebook comment, the president of Rain Country Dance Association, Zia D. Canbier, says that no members of the Borderline dance team were asked to leave. She's hoping to clear up some misunderstandings. When I reached out for an interview, they declined, but they did send us this statement saying that we are in communication with those directly involved.
And they do extend their apologies, and we're in communication trying to figure out how we want to move forward with this.
The association's president says since last weekend's incident, they have received an extreme amount of online harassment and a violent threat. She says SPD called the threat credible. We reached out to SPD to confirm they are investigating.
Violence and harassment is not something that we condone towards any person or any group for any reason.
Police have not yet returned our request.
I will tell you, for the most part, this community was wonderful.
Maddie White, King 5 News.
All right, so there you have that. Well, that's kind of silly, right? I'm tolerant, meaning that if I were to take my kids to a parade and they had some guys dressed as women and they were flirting with the crowd and other things, some body parts were exposed that normally shouldn't be exposed, and like what, right? Who are you? Who are you? Who am I to say what can be and what cannot be exposed? Well, the law is there. Unless I see a cop following the law and writing a ticket or something like that for an indecent exposure. I live in Las Vegas, and we're on the street. You go down to the strip or you go downtown, you'll see some scantily dressed people that basically have nothing on. So, but that's kind of the acceptable thing here. And if that's where you're going to do it, because those are considered adult areas, I have a lesser concern as I would if that was mostly a kid area. Parades are mostly for kids and stuff. That looked like they were doing a parade there for part of that, and then they were just dancing on the stage. A couple groups, LGBT, and a couple other people who were Hamas supporters. If they can't accept the American flag, which they are most likely citizens of that country, then perhaps they should give up their citizen and decide to move to a country that they feel better about. That's all I can say about that, because they should. So anyway, let's watch number 2, and this one is Kyle Rittenhouse. If you don't know who Kyle is, I'm sure you most likely do. He was the young kid. I think he was 17, just going on 18 at the time. He came from one state into Wisconsin, and he went in, I can't remember the name of the city, Waukesha or something like that. Kanisha or something like that. And he went to with his AR rifle illegally, as by law, and was carrying it open, and went to a business owner's property to protect it. And then he started to get attacked and chased by what I will call, at this point, rioters, because they're the ones that were aggressive and started to attack him. So that automatically makes them rioters. They had no reason. He's doing his First Amendment right, and he's protecting somebody else's property with their permission, most likely. I don't think he's going to be on somebody's property that he didn't have permission with a gun to protect. They started chasing him, and one of them had a gun. He fell to the ground. I think he took a shot and hit the guy with the gun in the arm, and then he shot again and killed a second one. I don't remember exactly how it happened. But anyway, he was found not guilty in Wisconsin, and so he just went to where is this? This is in Memphis, I guess. Memphis, and it says BLM protesters, so you could probably think that some of these might be students, because the worst thing ever is our cell phones. They send out a text, and if you're on that list, you're going to get it. So maybe a few of them are students, but I would almost bet at least a third, if not half or more, probably came on campus, which is private property to some aspect, or public property, and they started to go after him, which is rioting. They should have all been put in prison, in jail, cited and put in jail. So I'm going to let you look at this, but here, tolerance. Where is the tolerance on that side, right? There isn't any. Kill him, they said. Kill him. Oh my God. F you, they said at the very beginning. No justice. Really? No justice. The guy went to trial. He is found not guilty by a jury in Wisconsin. Found not guilty by a jury in Wisconsin. How does that work? No justice. Exactly. Let's look at one more real quick. This is an Austin police officer that ended up shooting a guy that they got called on a domestic violence call or something. I think, I'm not exactly sure what the call was. But they were trying to get him to surrender or whatever, and wow. Yep. Anyway, that didn't work. I didn't stop it. It started just to play on its own. So I'm going to see if I can back this up real quick. Bam. No. All right. I'm going to have to reload it real quick. It should be only a second, I think, here. So anyway, an Austin police officer that ended up shooting a guy that got in his car when he was told to stop and surrender, and started to drive away. And you can't really see, I don't think, from the video as to if he was about to hit somebody, but he thought he was going to hit somebody, so his life was in danger, so he shot. You also have to think that was going to become a chase out on the street. What would happen to that officer and the others, and if they allowed him to continue on and he killed somebody because they were chasing him? So cops are always the last to get help.
Also breaking tonight, Garza confirms publicly for the first time that his office will take Officer Christopher Taylor back to trial in the shooting death of Michael Ramos.
The jury was deadlocked in that murder trial last month, 8 voting not guilty, 4 voting to convict Taylor. Taylor shot Ramos in April of 2020 after officers said Ramos failed to obey the officer's orders and got into a car and began to drive. Taylor's defense attorneys say he fired to protect himself and fellow officers from being hit by Ramos's car. Prosecutors say Ramos was only trying to flee.
Are you going to retry Officer Christopher Taylor and the death of Michael Ramos?
Yeah, absolutely. In the court where that trial was held, there have been 3 mistrials this year, and every single one of those cases is going to be retried. This case is no different. What this community deserves is a criminal justice system that treats everyone the same.
Everyone the same.
Reed Shepherd is leaving Kentucky to go to...
Stop. Everyone the same. Sure. He's probably letting a bunch of criminals walk free. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about that district attorney. He is a George Soros appointed attorney or finance attorney. So he's getting financed by the left, the far left, to go after police officers and conservatives, just like the Department of Justice is. He's no better than Gascon in LA, or I forget the name of the guy that's after Trump in New York, Alvin Bragg, I think, maybe his name. So he's no better. He's the same, cut from the same mold. George Soros is I don't know if he's an American citizen or not, but he is in my opinion, he's a terrorist. He needs to be put down, him and his whole family. They need to be gone after, they need to be prosecuted, they need to be put in jail in the court of law, in the world court or wherever, because that's who they are, that's what they are. They make profit by sowing hate, deceit, and by taking advantage of the hate and deceit. The US dollar is the world's currency. He is doing everything he can to get that stopped, and with that happening, the United States would then crash and fall. Our dollar, which is worth almost nothing now, would be really worth nothing then, because it's not backed by anything. We've let the world set the standard for our dollar based upon. You can always count on America, but if America's not here anymore, then we're screwed. So tolerance on this guy. I'll just tell you, with an 8-4 against death penalty, or an 8-4 against conviction. I was in law enforcement and I was in the courts for a long time. I won't say it never happens, but it's probably less than 4 or 5% that a district attorney would go after him again with an 8-4 loss. So it was closer if it was 8-4 and 4 against, or 2 against and 10-4. Absolutely, I could see that happening, but 8-4 against conviction, that just doesn't happen. No, it just doesn't happen. So you can tell where his priorities are as far as that goes. Let's jump to the United Nations real quick. I want you to meet the UN's truth teller on racism, xenophobia, and intolerance. See signs of hope amid COVID quagmire and rising hate speech, which she's responsible for right here. Watch her. And I might jump in, and if you are akin to it, I might not hit all the spots, but if you're akin to what hate speech is and equals, I'm going to tell you. So we'll see if she has tolerance or intolerance. And you can't see that, but I'm going to show it real quick. So you can kind of see, what is this little logo right there? That is really weird. Yellow, black, and gray. What the heck does that mean? Anyway, here she goes. I don't know her name, but she'll tell you. There it is. 10-day.
What we're seeing in the context of the COVID pandemic is just the persistence of structural forms of racism and xenophobia. In countries across the world, you see that those who are most impacted are racial, ethnic, and national minorities, or else groups that are marginalized. And then transnationally, what people have described as vaccine apartheid, the allocation of access to vaccines, is dramatically differential depending on whether you're in the global north or the global south.
And what she said there is probably true. But which country out of all the countries in the world, even including probably the United Nations, gave more COVID medicines to people in Africa and everywhere else than the United States? Nobody! Nobody! So we're going to let the United States disappear from the face of the earth and become a totalitarian communist nation with a government that's going to take all your rights away because we, the silent majority, is not going to say anything. Or we're going to let it deteriorate to the point where we have to go to an actual shooting war. I hope that never happens. I just watched the movie Civil War yesterday. If you have not seen that, it's scary as to what could happen. I don't think California and Texas are really going to join arm in arm together. It would be awesome if they did, but California is so far left that they can't even see the right side of their mind. I know. I was born in California. I lived there for 50 some years of my life, and so it's not going to change. So she's right about COVID shots, but the United States was the country that provided most shots to anywhere. And it has nothing to do with racism, I guess you would say. And it has everything to do with the governments in Africa. I'm going to say that again. The governments in Africa. Some did better than others, and some probably were the most lacking countries anywhere in the world. It's because they're dirt poor. They've all been in civil wars for the last 100 years, roughly, since they all kind of transitioned from European control as colonies. So, you know what? She's a little bit right, but she's off target a little bit. In she's not telling the whole story.
Oftentimes the challenge is not the groups that are most directly impacted by racism or xenophobia, all of these, but it's the groups that are not. There is nobody who is not impacted by racism, xenophobia, and all of these structures. We saw last year, after the murder of George Floyd, there was a way of thinking.
So here she's lying again about racism and George Floyd. I'm not exactly sure when this video came out, so it could be possible that the information was available at that time, that she didn't have the information available at that time. But George Floyd did not die from the officer putting his knee on his neck. George Floyd died from a drug overdose. The coroner, I think, said that he didn't die from suffocation. So the officer didn't cut off his airway, didn't cut off his breathing. He didn't die from being hurt in that manner. But George Floyd was responsible. I mean, did he deserve to die if the officer killed him? No. Was the officer found guilty of murder of George Floyd? Yes. But the evidence has come out that he wasn't from the coroner. After the fact, after the trial. So whether that officer stays in jail, I hope if he has an attorney, the attorney will take action to change that conviction. But George Floyd, as I said, the evidence supports that he died from a drug overdose. He didn't respond to the officers. He tried to get in the car. He tried to fight and resist. They ended up handcuffing him finally and getting him on the ground. And then they had all these people starting to come in from all different sides on top of the officers. So one officer kind of took him while the others kind of started to defend themselves. So not uncommon when a riot is starting to build up around you, and that's what happened in this case. But George Floyd was not murdered. He died from an overdose. I know you probably don't like to hear that, but that's the truth.
Thinking and talking about racism and in some places even xenophobia that approach the kind of global conversation. And I think it's important for us to ask why it is that there were people of all races, ethnicities, genders out on the streets all fighting for the same thing. I think part of it had to do with...
Did you hear that? They were all fighting for the same thing? That's not a good word. How about protesting for the same thing? Protesting. Protesting's all right. Fighting means you're bringing out the guns and knives and you're going to attack somebody. So what does the other side do? They respond likewise. They bring out the guns and knives and they start fighting back in the same manner. So she, I'm sorry to say it, but she is very racist. She's African, not a big deal. I don't care where she's from. But she's teaching at UCLA in Los Angeles, California, the United States. She's going to make a few comments here shortly that talks about how she went to law school in the United States. I didn't get to go to law school in the United States. How is she so lucky? Because she probably comes from money in her country. I don't know that to be true or not. But how else would she get into a law school in the United States? Why is she in the United States? Why isn't she back in Africa trying to fight for the people there, protest for the people there, right? She wants all the good things of this world and of this country, and I don't know if she's a citizen or not. Most likely she's not, based upon just listening to her. But anyway, and this is the United Nations lady.
Just how visceral the murder of George Floyd was, and how much I think it reminded people of a kind of a shared humanity in a time when we had all been brought to a standstill because of the pandemic. When you think about revolutionary change, it is always led by youth because they are less
There you go. Listen to that. Revolutionary change is led by the youth. Those that Kamala Harris, 18 to 24, who are dumb and stupid, and they have to have somebody in their dormitory to take care of them on a day-to-day basis. She's just spitting it out to you, and that's why our colleges and university, and why DeSantis in Florida decided to stop the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is nothing but racist propaganda, in colleges and universities in Florida. If you really took time and you looked at it, you would see, I'm a teacher. I'm a police officer retired. I was a commissioner, public and traffic safety commissioner for the city of Temecula for almost 5 years. I am not dumb. I've run corporations. I've run small businesses of my own. This lady is racist. Hate to say it. Black people can be racist. And she is definitely racist. And she's trying to say, we're going to steal your kids. We're going to indoctrinate them through propaganda and through educational systems in our schools to make your kid one of our little drones. There you go.
Invested in the status quo. And I think the areas where there is the most hopefulness is the ways in which young people have attempted to appropriate social media platforms, including for the purposes of pushing back against racism and xenophobia. And I think if we can involve young people in those kinds of conversations, we can see a completely different world. I went to law school in the United States as a last-minute decision, actually. I spent most of my life thinking that I would be a doctor or an engineer or something like that. I've always been interested in human beings and in making the world one that is a more enjoyable place to live for everybody. Right now, my mandate is focused on racism, and that was not something that I ever imagined. You know, with all of these categories that we are placed in, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's disability status, whatever it is, we are who we are, and then society sort of inducts us into these categories because of the experiences that we have. And when it comes to racism and xenophobia, I think that's definitely my experience.
Bam. So there you have it. If that's the person you're looking to lead us out of racism, she's not it. She is definitely not it. Like I said, why is she in the United States? Go back to Africa where you can do your best work and support the people there. And that's where she should be. Not here in the United States or working for the United Nations, selling bogus stuff like this. All right, so I'm deleting that one. Close it. Yep. All right, so we're going to look at 20 years after the Durban Declaration, racism reverberates in echo chambers of hate. This is coming from the United Nations. What the heck is that? 20 years after the Durban Declaration, which has been a complete failure. 160 countries, I think they said, came to this in 2001 to set a standard to get us out of racism. But you know what? We can't get out of something that the governments that focus on that stuff, that allow that stuff to happen in their countries, until they change those, it's not going to ever change. What about all the, I think I might have talked about this, but what about all the slaves that are coming across the southern border? Sex slaves, women and children that are being sold into the United States in the sex trade business. It's huge. There might even be, well, there's not more of them than there were slaves back in 1860, but it's unacceptable. But where is Biden? Where is he fighting it? What is he doing to stop it? Where is he? He's not doing anything, and he's allowing it because he's leaving the border wide open. So if you're not going to stand up and say something against that, then shame on you. If you're the silent majority, you need to say stop. Stop it. Knock it off. We need to clean this up. We need to fix it. What about all the people that have died from fentanyl poisoning coming across our southern border? The chemicals come from China. They mix it in Mexico and bring it across the border and sell it here and kill our people. Probably more people have died from that than have died from COVID by this time. All right, so here we're going to look at this Durban one real quick. I might stop it or make some comments along the way. I just wanted to show you, after 20 years, how they've failed, the United Nations. The United States pays for a majority of the United States funding. I would say send the United Nations to a foreign country, let them have it, and let's get out of it, because it's worthless. It's supposed to prevent wars, it's supposed to prevent starvation, it's supposed to prevent sickness, and they've done nothing but fail. Here we go. Here we go. Maybe.
We hold it as an inviolable principle that racism must be opposed by all the means that humanity has at its disposal. Wherever it occurs, it has the potential to result in a systematic and comprehensive denial of human rights to those who are discriminated against. This is because all racism is inherently a challenge to human rights, because it denies the view that every human being is a person of equal worth with any other.
So with that being said, each human being is an equal of the other. Tell that to those persons who are trying to become globalists and control the planet. Tell that to the communist Chinese and Koreans and Venezuelans and Cubans and the governments is what I'm talking about. Iran, all these countries, Russia, that are all communist. Russia's communist, sorry, it is. They have a dictator there. His name is Putin. They're the ones that take and steal persons' freedoms. They're the one that inspire racism, ethnic cleansing, just kill people of religious backgrounds, and so forth. They are the ones, governments are the ones that don't have tolerance. They are the ones that need to be removed and cleaned up. And I would say the United States needs to clean itself up first, and then we need to go after each one of these governments and remove them and put the people back in control. That sounds pretty tough. I ain't going to be around another 20 years anyway, so hopefully I'll be gone before it all happens. The next revolution. I saw that movie Civil War. Go see it. It's very scary. All right, let's back to the video.
The build-up to this conference has prompted an extraordinary mobilization of society in many different countries. It has raised expectations which we must not disappoint.
We must join hands and work together to achieve a constructive, substantive agenda. Racism is truly a global issue, and we need it to be discussed at a global level, however sensitive and difficult that may be.
Today, apartheid lies dead, but sadly, racism lives on in all regions and in all societies. It's time to acknowledge and repair long-standing wrongs and reverse their consequences.
Despite what we've been through as Asian Americans and as New Yorkers, we're still here fighting every day for our shared future.
Bam. As Asian Americans fighting for our future. Screw the whites, the blacks, the Hispanics. All you other guys, screw you. And that's the problem. That's the problem right there. She doesn't care about any other race. There's only one race anyway. It's called the human race. Since we're all able to have kids from each color of skin, our DNA is pretty much the same across the board. It doesn't really matter what your skin color is. And this is where Martin Luther King had it right. Don't measure a person by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I've had persons that I've worked with that I would never want to work with again. And there's others that I would wish they would reproduce them multiple times over because they're so good. So it's comments like this Asian lady just made. It's not, and this is propaganda. Again, this is 2024. So now we're looking at 2001 when it started. This probably was 20 years, so 2021, and here we are in 2024. What have they accomplished? It's all politics. It's all governments that won't follow through. Yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do it. U.S., keep giving us money, and it's just a big game. It's all about politics, and that's all it is. So tolerance is good, but you got to stop and start being a little intolerant at times. You have to be able to fight back and say, this is not how things are supposed to be.
The pain that I went through, it was horrific watching my brother pass away. He was tortured to death.
He was
that
not.
was a modern day execution.
Was not. Police training.
Systemic racism is a set of racialized norms that have been embedded in our law, our policy, our practices. And what it's done is really licensed atrocity.
Bam. Did you hear that? That was very racist right there. She's atrocity, and they're putting this stuff on their videos. All it does is promote and continue racism. That's all it does.
In light of these profound and wide-ranging injustices, there is an urgent need to confront the legacy of enslavement, the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and successive racially discriminatory policies and systems, and to seek reparatory justice.
So you gotta love these photos, right? Who do you think these are really focused at? America! They're focused at America, the United States. These are all pictures, basically, from probably the United States. It's scary. And this is the United Nations. They're supposed to be fighting against racism through this program, and all they're doing is promoting it right here. How sad, right? All right, we're gonna close this one up, and we got one more video. I wasn't gonna show this, but I'm gonna show it real quick. It's only 2 minutes. All right, 2 minutes. We're going to show it. All right. This is
Is the world doing enough to combat racial discrimination? There's hope, and the struggle to make our world more equal must continue. There's already a strong foundation called the Durban Declaration and Programme of Action. This pivotal document aims to grow global efforts that address and fight the root causes of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia and related intolerance. The DDPA was born in 2001 at the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa. States, activists and others from more than 160 countries created this unprecedented roadmap. The document is comprised of a declaration that condemns racial discrimination based on race, colour, descent, national or ethnic origin, and it has a programme of action outlining how to fight these scourges. At the heart of the DDPA is the plight of victims of racism and racial discrimination. They can also suffer multiple forms of discrimination based on other related grounds, such as sex and religion. The DDPA recognises the links between colonialism and past and contemporary forms of racism and discrimination, and that slavery and the slave trade are crimes against humanity. It highlights the effects of systemic racism in prolonging inequalities. It underscores the intimate connection of poverty, marginalisation, social exclusion and injustice with racism, discrimination and intolerance. 2 decades after the DDPA was adopted, racial discrimination in all its forms still persists, and in some places has increased, yet the DDPA's measures are still relevant today. They have to be implemented promptly and effectively. We must fight against racism in all its guises. We must stand up firmly against any ideas promoting racial superiority or hatred. We must stand up for a society free of racism that offers equal opportunities and access to justice for all.
Okie dokie. Was that BS or what? So
Switch to Chrome to protect
leave it in
yourself
their
from
own.
malware, so you can surf
Close
without
this.
getting phished. Fast.
Let me close that. So, oh man, it's so much BS, isn't it? Have you ever seen anything more racist than that? And they have a plan, but their execution is terrible. That's why it doesn't work, and why racism has grown in the world, especially here in the United States exponentially over the last 12 years, especially under Obama and Biden. It's expanded and just ballooned crazily here. I've been extremely tolerant in my life, but now it's time to become a little intolerant. That's why I'm doing this vlog. I think you need to as well. I want to show you one last, it's not a video, but it's just a quick, hopefully it works. So, this gentleman, Florida abandons free speech, principles to combat DEI excess. And what's DEI? Diversity. What is it? Diversity, inclusion, and what? Irresponsibility. Yeah, that's what it should be. It's a program that basically cheats some classes while giving free stuff to another class. It's reparations. And unfortunately, that's not how America has ever worked. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. The only problem is it discludes a portion of the populace. And I hate to say it, but primarily white people and primarily white men people. So anyway, this guy is kind of crazy. His comments sound kind of cool, but if you really dig into it, he's saying, hey, governor, we had our way for a period of time. Now you're shutting us down. But we shut you down first. But, that you shut us down, we deserve to have the same thing that you now have. So it's like a cat fight back and forth. We had it. We disincluded you. Now we got it. Now you disincluded us. And now we want to have it back in. So let's share. But you know what? There are some things in life that are black and white. Like this shirt. It's got some gold in it. But black and white. And, you know what? Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a racist program. It is. If you haven't looked at it as a teacher, I kind of looked at it. It is racist. And you don't want racism. As just the lady from the United Nations said, we need to get our children indoctrinated. We have to go through our kids. We have to make them fight for freedoms and so forth. When they should be looking at, we need to get our students to think outside the box, cultural changes and that type of stuff. There are some religions, I'm not going to point any out, but there are some religions that are very culturally and morally and values and custom-wise strong. I showed a map a couple weeks ago of free press in the world, and you could definitely see like the communist countries that were dark brown, right? And then you could see other countries that were red, which included all the countries I spoke about a few minutes ago. And most of the Middle East, with the exception of Israel. So it's time to stand up, silent America and the majority, and put your foot down. Your best choice is to vote, right? Okay. I'm not so sure that the vote is going to be protected and it's going to be valid. Oh, we were trusting you, Dave, until you just said that. But when you have 100,000 people in a town and you get 120,000 votes through your tally machine, that's an issue, right? When you're getting votes from dead people, they've been gone for 5 years, that's a problem. When I've moved 6 years ago to Las Vegas, I'm still getting voter stuff from Riverside County in California. Why haven't I been cleared off? I haven't voted since I moved here in California. Is somebody stealing my vote there and using it? That'd be interesting to find out, wouldn't it? But anyway, with that said, tolerance versus intolerance, or I think we've been very tolerant in this country. Very extremely tolerant, and we need to show a little bit of intolerance at this point, at least for the things that matter in life. You need to speak your voice and say something now before it's too late. And this is my way of saying something. Nobody watches this, so it's not like I'm going to really persuade anybody to change or do anything. But you never know. It could be a hit, right? Next thing you know, if somebody finds me, shares it with their 450 million, like, what's her name? The singer. Yeah. And she shares it and everybody's watching me, and then all of a sudden I'm a millionaire. And I'm giving all that money back to the poor in Las Vegas and stuff. So anyway, that's me. Next week, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but we'll see what's popular, and we'll talk about something then. You guys have a great week. Stay out of trouble, and take care. Bye.